We don't have the law. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're a couple of minutes into the meeting. Um, Welcome everybody. I think Steve was initially hoping we would give a little bit of an update in terms of where we are right now with the budget in particular. Um, as of right now, we have very little funding for the 250th for next year. As I'm sure many of you are aware, the National Endowment for the Humanities has terminated many grants across the country, including Connecticut Humanities Operating Funds. So we are looking at using the next year to really reimagine what Connecticut Humanities what our funding reality is. So because of that, we really will not be able to commit more resources to the 250th unless the state decides to somehow commit more resources to CTH and the work that we're doing, and therefore we can dedicate a portion of those new resources to the 250th. That said, we are committed to moving forward with a kind of $0 budget that we have shared out with the commission back on April 16th. There is a recording of that if anybody is interested in learning more. But we do see ourselves moving this work forward, just really using the work of volunteers and our existing staff with minimal expenses outside of that. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. And this is where Steve is great with his follow-up questions and leading me towards whatever he wanted me to share. But if anybody does have any other questions, feel free to pop in.
I just saw that there was Mellon has allotted $15 million. I think it just appeared over the news. I wasn't sure if there's an earmark, a specific program that's earmarked to.
So there is no earmark for that. It is very much just operating support for the councils. So each humanities council, I should say, will receive $200,000 in an outright award and then another $50,000 in matching funds. We just received notice of this as well, so we are still kind of working out what the matching fund process will be for Connecticut Humanities. But the outright funds is really just to help stabilize the humanities councils. We are actually fairly fortunate in that we have about a year's worth of funding in reserve. Other humanities councils are not in that same boat. So this is really going to keep some folks afloat for at least a short time. So for us, it is kind of helping stabilize CTH and helping us move forward a little bit.
Thank you for that update.
And like I said, it's pretty new news for everybody, so I'm sure it will look a little different. If you ask about it in a couple of weeks, we'll have a better answer. Awesome. So if there are no more questions, we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is this Researching Local Stories project. It's another one where it would be helpful to have Steve here with us, but we do have Jean McGavin from History Chip, who I know Steve started these conversations with you. I think his thought is that a great way to get students and teachers engaged with the 250th is to encourage students to do research on local stories. And he was looking for a way that to make it easy to share out that research, and felt that History Chip could be that solution for us. In terms of the actual local stories project, I don't think we don't have any kind of materials yet in terms of defining what that would look like. But I think the hope was that we would be just encouraging history teachers to think about bringing some local history into the classroom and having students do research on specific people, events, and others around the 250th in their communities to kind of get that local angle on it, to make it really a local story for students. So I think the question is this a project that we think teachers and students would gravitate towards? How can we make it easier? And I'll just leave it at that to begin.
I can tell you from a classroom teacher's perspective, if you get the coordinators involved, so most districts have like a humanities coordinator or somebody in the central office. So I teach in Bristol, and we have a humanities coordinator for grades 6 through 12. And then we also have one at the elementary level that's K to 5. And so they're in charge of like language arts and social studies. And as teachers, we like I would love to do that, and I incorporate like local history in my classroom. But the coordinators are the ones that tell us this is what you have to do. So if there is a way that you guys could reach out at like the district level to say, hey, this is something that's really unique with the 250th. If this is something that you guys could make a priority, then the teachers kind of get the okay to do like the fun stuff in the classroom and kind of get away from the here is the specifics that we have to do, because a lot of times that stuff does get dictated from like the top down. So because if you went around to like all the social studies teachers and were like, hey, we have these awesome resources, we would all jump on it. But if we don't get the okay from like our central office, then we can't do anything really.
Great, that's really helpful.
Cindy, another idea, and this is a little off topic, and you can throw things at me through the computer screen, but another thing that kind of comes to mind is, we're about to have the State History Day contest on Saturday. And so thinking about next year, I was just thinking, I'd love this group at one of our meetings, maybe be able to have some kind of brainstorming. We always do a list of Connecticut topics, and I'd love to have this group brainstorm some local topics that students could explore, because sometimes it's just that kids don't know really cool topics, and I can't reveal it, but I can tell you that next year's annual theme will relate to the American Revolution. It'll be very complimentary.
Well, I think that's a great idea. And I know, or I believe, I'll say, that Steve was hoping some of these projects could also kind of dovetail and overlap with History Day projects. I think the hope was that History Trip would be a way to make the projects they do accessible for a longer period of time. Okay. Just making sure that I understand the History Day platform, because those are only available during the competition, like if they create a website.
Actually, you can save them.
Okay.
We're able to save them post contest we're asked. And, you know, one of the things we're thinking of for not this summer, but next summer is doing it, excuse me, an exhibit here at the old State House that would kind of tie into that whole theme of doing history and feature some of the projects. So, you know, it's something we could maybe not just have an exhibit, but maybe think about doing some kind of program. So I just wanted to throw it out there.
So I think we can definitely do some brainstorming. We can create some kind of informational one pager that we can share with coordinators at the district level, and then some kind of handout for a step-by-step process for teachers to implement. Is there anything else that would be helpful to move this forward?
Also, if the local like historical societies, like if you get it out to them, because I know that they always want to get the schools like involved. So if it might be a good way to connect the two. So if you let the historical societies know that the schools might be doing this, it might be a good way to kind of pair like I know a lot of towns already have like 250th like committees and like a lot of historical societies are running them. So it might be a way that if they kind of came up with some ideas too, like, hey, this happened in our town, then it might be a way to pair like with the work that they're already doing or have already done. And then the kids will be more interested because it's their town, you know? Because like I'm doing like the Civil War right now in my classroom, and the kids are asking like, well, oh, is that a Civil War monument in our hometown? Like where like did people fight from our town? So like they're already thinking about it, but they just don't know where to look.
That's great.
I'm just going to follow up on that because, you know, when Tracy was alive, that's one of the things that she worked on, and that the two of us, of course, have put together lessons just from our state or from our town, and we already have them archived at the local library. I would try that as well. Local libraries might have stuff, and you know, um, and I totally agree about schools. They're really hard to get into schools these days because everything is so prescribed. But you know, if like I know the town of Windsor, we worked with them, we did a workshop with them, and they've done a lot of work to putting together materials. And if, you know, those town historians or those history centers worked with even just one or two teachers, you know, just to sort of put together some materials. Because here's the problem: if we have a lot of material. I mean, we have you know, close to 90 people in the West Division that we've done research on. But the problem is that teachers don't have a lot of time to actually read through every single thing. So, you know, we put together some lessons. So there should be PD, and maybe Steve can run something, a PD session for teachers. I think that would help. And then have teachers share across different disciplines and different, you know, age groups. I think teachers need to be in conference with each other to run ideas past each other. It works better that way than just throwing materials at them. Doesn't often translate, you know, it doesn't get into the classroom unless I think if they brainstorm with each other, it's a lot better. So that would be my suggestion.
I'm not sure. I can't speak for Steve in terms of
Yeah.
his ability for PD, but I know it's something we've talked about quite a bit. Just a little less sure on.
Funding. Yeah. Yeah, I know. But you know, and I'm sure you all feel the same way. We have to get this information out there because it's being the powers that be or want to change the story, and we have to get the local stories out there. We just do. So we have to find as many ways as possible to do that. So.
Any other questions, feedback, ideas? Kind of building up a list to talk through with Steve when he's not sitting in front of a judge.
Even if there was a way kind of going off of what she said, I know like with like PD, if there was like a virtual like session, like even if it was just like an hour session over the summer, like when teachers are off, just to have like a, you know, like a free thing where we can do it online, and teachers can like zoom in so that they're not worried about like driving or having to do any of that kind of stuff, or competing with school hours, so that we can kind of capitalize on you know, teachers being off. And also, if teachers teach summer school, it's in the morning. So and
That was
it's
gonna be my
done.
next question.
Yeah, so if they teach summer school, it's in the morning, and it's usually done by like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So if it's like an early afternoon, that would kind of be like a really good like time of day to do it. Because normally summer school ends, from like just my experience, like by like 1, 2 o'clock the latest. So if teachers do summer school, because right now there's a lot of teachers that don't do summer school, so so districts are paying more to do summer school. So I think that would be something that people might be more willing to do, like, you know, jump on a Zoom or a webinar, to get the information out there, and even like sign up for like, hey, we'll send you digital content, or we'll send you a packet in the mail, like, so that people who are at least a little bit interested might get the information out there before maybe we can get a physical PD going. But at least the word is starting to spread more beyond like our individual circles.
Do you think, does mid-July feel right for that?
I think that would be better. I personally know that like a lot of teachers go on vacation in August, that I know like a lot of my coworkers do that. And I'm not gonna lie, right after school's over, I don't want to think about anything school related. So I think mid-July would be good. It's like after 4th of July, before we're getting back into school. So I think that would be great. Yeah. Like I know personally, I'm doing a teacher summer institute at Fort Ticonderoga. It was through NEH, and originally the funding got pulled, and then I just got an email like 3 days ago saying they got funding back. So and it's America 250, but but they got funding through NEH. So and it's that same time period. It's like that middle of July kind of time. So I think that would be a really good time.
Awesome, thank you. Everyone coming off mute, so I'm gonna say we're probably good. Thanks for all the feedback, the ideas, and we'll pull this together. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, we sent out a link to the education packet. And I'll put that link in the chat as well. Lisa, do you want to take it from here?
Sure, thanks, Cindy. So thanks everyone for your suggestions, comments from last time. That was really helpful feedback. So I made a lot of those changes. The current draft, as you see it, is more geared around the America 250 themes. So power of place, for the common good, doing history, and inclusive stories. So that's how each sort of section is broken up. It covers grades 3, 5, 8, and high school. Currently, there are completed lessons for grade 5 and close to completed lessons for 3 and 8. But I'll be adding those in as we go, as I can spend more time on this project. So have any questions, please ask. But I tried to make it as straightforward for teachers who might not have a lot of time to devote to America 250 or Connecticut history in general. It isn't necessarily a deep dive into, teaching students how to think like historians. That's some part of the activities, and there are ways to sort of expand activities and go deeper. But this was really us thinking about, okay, if a teacher needs help in the classroom or wants an additional activity, right, to introduce them to this topic, this would be a starting point. So that was the thinking behind that. I tried to include some printable worksheets and things that teachers could just kind of grab and go if they wanted to do a small part of the lesson. But then there are deeper discussion questions, activities around primary sources, and things like that that are in there as well. There are also a couple specific questions in the agenda. I can put them in the chat too, just to sort of get some feedback. I know we had talked last time that it's really helpful for teachers to have things in different formats. So like a Google Doc, Word doc, PDF version. So this is just the PDF version, but there's definitely more to come on that, and trying to make sure that it's as easy to use as possible. So any suggestions there in addition to that would be helpful. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, so with like I know we talked about before about making it in different versions. So like I think this is really great because like with teachers, we have to always like modify things based on like what our class is. So like some teacher teach in a block schedule where they have 80 minutes and sometimes it's 45 or 50, like, or whatever. Or we're accounting for kids' modifications or their accommodations as part of their different plans, and we have to like add lines for their writing or we translate things. So making the documents like as like accessible as possible. Like so just making sure obviously it's a PDF, but like so that there's like no weird like text boxes or like weird things so that like if a teacher when you do make it into the other formats that it's pretty straightforward for if a teacher like makes a copy of it and they can go in and just manipulate it. Or if they need to, like sometimes with longer text, we chunk it out because it's like in a student's like 504 plan, and we'll take longer text and we'll chunk out and we'll put the questions underneath the text. So we'll like manipulate stuff, like we'll just take the stuff that people have already created, but we just kind of like flip it around. So as long as like I've had things where I'm like, oh, this is so great. And then I like make the copy and then I'm like, this is a really weird box. Why did the people make this? So as long as there's none of like that in it, I think that would be like really great. But if you're just doing it in a doc, like then that should be fine. But I know like there's a lot of images and stuff. So just kind of thinking about that with like text wrapping. And I know that's
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I know like that's just like a technical thing, but like you'll go to make a change and then I'll be like, where did the picture go?
Right.
But the pictures are super helpful, especially for students that are at different levels or like if English is not their first language, like it's really helpful for them. So I really appreciate that you guys put that in there too.
So Danielle, I have a kind of in the weeds technical question. How do you go about editing these things that you find? Is it whatever the provider gives you, like a Google Doc, or they're like download a Word document?
Yeah.
I guess that what we're trying to figure out, and this is part of the question, is what do teachers use? And I'm sure it varies by district, right? I'm not an educator.
It
So like
varies
what?
by district. So my district, we're a Google district, so we use Google Docs. So what I'll do is that let's say I'm using a let's say I'm just like using a lesson that I've even personally created in the past, and I want to manipulate it and change it up because I don't like how I did it, or I want to add something else. Or like this group of kids, like, yeah, that's not really gonna work. So I might, if I'm using a primary source and it's just a longer text, I will break out the text. So like I'll kind of chunk it out and just literally put it inside of like a text box, and then put the questions directly underneath it. And then like do the same thing underneath. So because sometimes kids just need that visual separation. And then like my honors class, like they don't need that. So it's so that like all kids in like my entire team, like all like 80 kids on my team, they're all seeing the same exact primary source text, but one class might see it all on one page, another class might see it, but it's like broken down into 4 separate chunks and the questions are directly underneath it instead of at the end. So it's just so that it's more like accessible, that I can make those changes based on like what my individual kids need.
So
Because I've
just,
noticed that like just in my own teaching, I have preferences versus like my 2 counterparts, the other 2 8th grade teachers, like we'll make something together and I'm like, that's really cool. I don't like how that looks. I'm gonna move it. And sometimes the kids just want like, the text is in this box, so I'm gonna put it in this box, and then I'm gonna put the questions underneath it. And then we move on. So it's just kind of like so that, it also kind of depends on the complexity of the text, like, and we are looking at stuff from the 18th century. So I don't change like wording, I don't change like anything like that. So sometimes the kids just need like a little bit of a visual break and like be like, okay, let's break down what this just said and then move on to the next thing.
okay,
Because
so some sort of,
you want them to go through it. But if there's like too many words in one spot, it might be just like a little too much for them.
so some sort of document with just the text and like a word. I'm not going to call it plain text, 'cause that means like
Yeah.
something else, but like just you can manipulate all of the text of all of the lesson and all of the primary source, kind of just having that available to take it, because you're right, we can't plan for what everyone likes and what everyone
Yeah.
uses, but offering something that is flexible enough so that you can take it and copy and paste it where you need to go. That's kind of
Exactly.
what I'm getting. Okay.
Yeah,
thank
because
you.
I even like sometimes I like to do the pictures separate, or like we do like every day the kids come in and I call it's called a do now, like it's, or some people call it a bell ringer or something, and they come in and there'll be a question on the board, and a lot of times I'll use like primary source images or paintings and things like that, and they'll just have a question. So sometimes I'll pull the images from lessons like these online, right? And so I'll just have the image up there and then I'll have a question underneath it. And so it just gets them started thinking about like what we're gonna learn for the day. And then it'll get directly in there. Like, I remember like the Connecticut Museum of History has Israel Putnam's Oath of Allegiance. Like I know in here it has Benedict Arnold's. And so I've had them have that image up and they have to try and figure out what it says and like what is it. And then we talk about like what an Oath of Allegiance is and like what could happen to you if like somebody caught you with this, like, and then I go into like this hands-on thing with like quills and ink and then they get all excited. But like, so having also the ability to just like pull the images too is great, because then we try and grab their attention in any kind of way. So if you have like the nice fancy one like this, and then like a document that's just like, here's the text and the images,
Mhm.
do what you want with it, that would be awesome. Because I might just be like, I'm gonna make it how I want it. Or some people might look at this and be like, I'm gonna print this and do it just like this. It would
That's-
be great.
Those were the questions we had. And I think you're right, trying to reach the people that don't have time versus someone like yourself who has thought all this out and has a method, like how do we serve both people? So that's really, really helpful. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you can connect it to something you're already working on. That's, something you've planned out, and however we can make it like as adaptable as possible is what we're going
Yeah,
for.
if
So
if you look at how the American Battlefield Trust does things,
okay.
they have some really great ways of breaking it down. Like I've pulled things from them before. They started doing that when COVID happened because people were like, I need to post stuff electronically. How do I do this? And so they have like, um, here's this format, here's how you do this. So they have like a teacher version and a student version. So if you take a look at like their lessons on their website, they do a pretty good job of breaking it down.
Great. I'll check that out. Thank you. That kind of connects to one of the questions too, that I was wondering, regarding kind of printable materials. Like there's a lot in this packet right now. It goes through, you know, the 4 themes and covers a lot of different grade levels. So for a teacher that is only teaching 3rd grade, for example, would it be helpful to have like a separate document or separate sort of section for just like what you can print and go, or like a student version? How much should we include there, I guess, is my question. I don't want to overwhelm people with information, but also making sure that they feel, you know, like they aren't just thrown a lesson.
I mean, I would maybe have like, if you could have like 3 different ones, like one that's like elementary based, like a K5, and then like one that's like 6-8, and then one that's like high school. And so that you have the ability to like, here's all the materials that like K-5, it would be work for K-5, so that like if a 3rd grade teacher wants to use some of the stuff that might be higher up, they can. And the same thing, like I sometimes pull from high school stuff because I teach 8th grade, or I've also pulled from 5th grade stuff because it's like they'll do more hands-on-y things in 5th grade. So I'll just pull the hands-on stuff, but I'll make my own questions. So to be more grade level for my students. So if you kind of maybe package like 3 separate ones so that teachers can kind of gear like what they're specifically looking for, and then they're not so overwhelmed with like, oh my gosh, there's like so much stuff here, I have to look through all of this for what I'm looking for. So then if you do put all the different versions or all the different things in there, it's not as overwhelming because it's just 3 separate,
Mhm.
like elementary, middle, and high.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
Wait, I think we skipped past the second question, or I missed it. Also entirely possible. Do we, do you feel, Misa, like we need to think about other resources, or are we feeling pretty good with where we are with this right now?
I'm definitely open to more suggestions if people feel like there are gaps or serious things missing or things I should consider. But we have put a fair amount of thought into what's going in here already. I'm trying to be intentional about covering different voices, different stories. So please share if you have suggestions. I saw a helpful one in the chat. But
I think part of this too, just where I'm sitting as, digital humanities and thinking this way, this can be iterative, right? We can always update. We can always have a most updated version. We'll include a date when things were last updated. I don't want this to be just like, it could be a living document, right? We can always put out more updates. We can always put out special editions. The way that I see the information that Misa's putting together, and what I've told her to do is just focus on the content and structure it how you have it now. But we can create packets around certain themes going forward, certain people, certain places, or certain important dates. I think once we get a critical mass of content, which we're always open to, we can then do some really cool stuff with it. And my mind goes to how do we will have the PDFs, right? But are there other platforms that people like and use that we could kind of mimic digitally so that you can get just one lesson, and we can just keep adding to that. And it's kind of working in tandem with Teach It. It's a little different, obviously, as you see. But the more suggestions that you have, just because we say this is the first version of it doesn't mean we don't want to do more or correct an oversight or focus on something else. So always open to it. Really appreciate this group, like Misa said, giving feedback. And yeah, we're always here to talk.
Similarly to what we were talking about earlier, we did think about doing a short webinar for each grade level. So that way, again, with the question on where we'll be in terms of professional development and whether we can do something bigger, but at the very least, having short webinars that can be recorded, and then we can have the recordings available with the materials to hopefully answer at least the first level of questions that people have. And then, of course, people can reach out with any other questions as well. So we will start to kind of plan for when and where those, when those will take place and how we get the word out about them. So I think, is there anything else that anyone is hoping to share during today's meeting? I don't want to draw it out if we don't have to, but also happy to have any other conversation. By group today. So I think we'll go ahead and end the meeting in that case. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you, James.
Thank you.